Hello my fellow Christian fiction lovers, welcome to another video. Today is going to kind of be like part one of a mini series. I'm going to be doing two videos with this kind of topic, I guess. And this video is going to be 5 books I did not expect to be 5 stars but ended up being 5 stars. And then the next video is going to be 5 books I expected to be 5 stars and they were not. So yeah, I saw this idea on TikTok, I think, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a cool video idea. Let me make a YouTube video out of it. So here we are, and I am now going to be sharing with you 5 books I did not expect to be 5 stars, and they ended up being 5 stars. So first up is The Whole Price of Privilege Trilogy by Jessica Dotta. I'm just holding up one book, the other 2 are in this stack here. I read these books last summer. I'm not a huge series person. I kind of like one story to just be all in one book, but these books were like on sale and I decided to buy them. I don't remember exactly why, but I just did. And I ended up loving them, devouring them in like a week, which is a lot for 3 books. Like reading 3 books in a week. It's a lot for me. We'll put it that way. And the main character, I just fell in love with her. I fell in love with the whole like gothic suspense and mystery and the journey that these characters, but specifically the main character, went on, finding out more about her family and her love life. Oh my gosh, it was just so much, and it was perfect to have it in a trilogy. There's no way the whole story could have been done justice in just one book. And one reason I love it so much is, if you guys don't know, I am not a fan of love triangles, not my thing at all. These books had a love triangle and I enjoyed it. So if that doesn't say anything, I don't know what will. The whole series, like in general, is 5 stars. I gave each book a little different rating, but overall I would say it is a 5-star series and I highly, highly recommend it. And I'm not quite sure why these books aren't talked about more. Like, seriously. Okay, the next book is The Hidden Side by Heidi Chiavaroli. I got into Christian fiction by reading Heidi Chiavaroli. I read Freedom's Ring by her like years ago. And then kind of like as the pandemic started, I was trying to find some books to read to, you know, like kill time, because I had so much time on my hand, and I ended up ordering 2 more of her books, and this was one of them. The Hidden Side is a treasure trove of unpacking trauma and dealing with the past and things that you never want to have to deal with, but they were just put in front of the main characters, and they were forced to have to reconcile some things, specifically with, it mostly follows a mother, and she has to deal with something terrible that her son does, and it is a dual timeline. I did prefer the present day story more. The historical setting, I did enjoy it, but I didn't think it necessarily matched the present day setting. That being said, the reason I gave it 5 stars is because I just loved the way that the present day setting unpacked the trauma and just emotional weight that the main characters went through. It was a mother and daughter's perspective in the present day. And yeah, that is why I gave it 5 stars. And I didn't expect it to be 5 stars just because I kind of bought it based off of who the author was. I'd enjoyed one of her previous books and that was that. So yeah, and I kind of forgot what it was about as well. And then I started reading it and I was like, whoa. Trigger warning. Definitely look into any triggers for this book if you think about reading it. Next up is 80/30 by Ted Dekker. I read this book during the pandemic. I also went to a thrift store along with doing some online shopping and just like scoured the little tiny book section for any Christian fiction, and I found a couple, and this was one of them. 80/30 views the life of Jesus through a young woman's eyes she is not Jewish. She didn't grow up in it. She's somewhat familiar with the culture, but she has not been practicing it. She's actually from a Bedouin tribe in Arabia, and I don't remember exactly why she has to go through Jewish territory, but she does, and she ends up meeting Jesus and being impacted by his life and testimony. And then in the second book in this duology, 33, which I also own, is kind of when she comes to Christ. And I think that is the death and resurrection of Christ as well in that book. But yeah, so I did not expect this to be 5 stars because I picked it up from a thrift store for 50 cents and I was like, I'll give it a shot. We'll see. And I ended up falling in love with it, and I loved viewing the life of Christ through an outsider's eyes, because that's kind of what we all are in this day and age. We're outsiders. We're not super familiar with Jewish culture. But yeah, so I just liked it because while like I didn't necessarily 100% relate to the main character, the way she came at looking at Christ felt familiar-ish to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's why I gave it 5 stars. I just loved it. I loved the new perspective. Okay, and then next, this is a more recent 5-star. This is How the Light Gets In by Jolina Petershaim. I got this book in, I think it was like a Tyndale $5 fiction sale or something, and I picked it up along with a couple of other books, and all I knew is that it had something to do with like a Ruth retelling, and that was basically it, because I am known for buying books and not remembering what they're about, just remembering I liked the description when I originally read it. And this book, like threw me for a loop with the plot twists. It had 2 very significant plot twists that I'm not gonna get into because I don't want to spoil it, but I just like fell in love with the story and the emotion and the way these super delicate topics were handled and the decisions that were made, just all, it felt so thought through and calculated, and the main character didn't make any rash decisions. She thought through these really hard things that were in her life, and I appreciated it because it felt so real. Like, as far-fetched as this story is, and you'll understand what I mean if you read it, it felt like something that would actually happen. It felt like something a real woman going through this grief and this uncertainty would actually make those decisions. And yeah, I really liked it, and I didn't expect it to be 5 stars because I bought it based off of the description and that was it. I'd never heard of the author. I heard nothing about the story prior to reading it, and now I love it and I want to talk about it more, and I think you guys should really go read it. And finally, we have The House at Riverton by Kate Morton. This is not a Christian fiction book, but it is still 5 stars nonetheless. And I don't think I've ever talked about how I found this book. So basically, when my family lived in Europe, we would go traveling, obviously, because it's Europe, and we took a trip to Switzerland, and we stayed in this Airbnb, and I had brought a book to read, but, you know, I saw that in the closet in one of the bedrooms, they had this like stack of about a dozen books, and so I just looked through them. Some of them weren't in English, some of them were. This one was in English. I read the back, and I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like such an interesting story. And so I read it during the like 5 days we were there, and this is like not a short book. And literally I fell so in love with this story that I took it everywhere with us on that trip. I would carry it if it didn't fit in my bag. I would read it when we were like waiting for the train. I would read it when we were waiting for like food. If I didn't want to go in the grocery store, I would read this book. Like, I fell in love with it. I literally remember we were like in one of those gondolas that, you know, like takes you up the mountain, because we hiked a lot, so we like took one up to go hike on this mountain. And we're in this gondola, like 360 panoramic view of these gorgeous mountains. We're literally like up in the clouds, and all I could focus on was this book right here. Like, that is how obsessed with it I was. And I ended up like buying a replacement of another, because this is like a mystery, so I ended up getting a mystery from a local like bookstore, and then taking this book because I wanted it so badly. That's my testament to the beauty of this book. But forewarning, it is not a Christian fiction book if you do look into it. Anyway, that is the video. Those are 5 books that I had 0 expectations of them being 5 stars, and they ended up blessing my soul and giving me a 5-star read to add to my collection. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys have had similar experiences, you just found a random book, or you picked a book up at a thrift store, you had like no expectations for it, and it ended up being 5 stars. I feel like that happens a lot, and most of my 5-star reads are kind of books that I bought just like on a whim, or I got them with just, you know, whatever, like not expecting anything. But next video will be books I expected to be 5 stars and were not. I think that will be interesting to talk about, but until then, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Until then, bye!